The case of Orsolya Gaal. Orsolya Gaal was a 51-year-old woman and mother who was found dead inside a duffel bag in Forest Hills, Queens on April 16, 2022. The cause of death was multiple sharp force injuries to her neck. This is Orsolya's case. Ms. Gaal is originally from Hungary and studied at the Budapest Business School College of International Management and Business. On the night of her murder, Ms. Gaal reportedly went out to see a show. She is believed to have met up with a man before returning home that evening. Police say she was killed in the basement of the home. Sources familiar with the autopsy information say Ms. Gaal suffered nearly 60 wounds with knife wounds to her neck, torso, left arm, fingers and hand. Surveillance footage shows the killer dragging a wheeled duffel sports bag containing her body around 4:30 a.m. on Saturday morning. The bag was discovered by a dog walker just after 8 a.m. on a popular walking track on Metropolitan Avenue in Forest Hills. 51-year-old Orsolya Gaal was stabbed to death in her own home by handyman David Banola. The two had been having an affair, and Banola killed her in a jealous rage after she ended things with him. Orsolya Gaal was a 51-year-old woman with a promising future. Sadly, she'd made the mistake of entering into an affair with a handyman 9 years her junior, David Banola. What she didn't realize was that Banola was far from being trustworthy, as he'd committed multiple violent crimes in the past. What's more, he had issues controlling his anger and had threatened Gaal with physical harm in the past. Banola met Gaal in her home and stabbed her multiple times before slitting her throat. Grasping the horrific implications of what he'd done, he placed her body in a duffel bag and dumped it off on the roadside near her home. For years, David Banola had been known to frequent local bars and coffee shops, preying on unsuspecting women. He was notorious for his philandering ways, so it was of no surprise when Orsolya fell prey to his advances. Before long, the two were involved in an illicit affair and Banola became increasingly possessive of her. When Orsolya finally decided to end their relationship, it proved too much for him to handle and he erupted in a jealous rage. Eventually, she lay slain on the snow-covered steps of her apartment building as Banola disappeared into the darkness. It seemed obvious who was responsible for this tragedy, but authorities looked into Orsolya's husband anyway out of process. In due time, he was cleared from suspicion and police eventually apprehended Banola as he tried to flee across the border. His gruesome crime revealed an even darker side to his character than most had ever guessed. It was a cold, dark night when tragedy struck. Just 4 days after the stabbing, the police were able to connect the dots and arrest the perpetrator, a man who had been having an affair with the victim for 2 years, on and off. The relationship had recently been rekindled, but unfortunately it quickly became clear that he had no intention of letting things end naturally. In a fit of rage, he decided to take matters into his own hands. The handyman, who pleaded guilty to brutally stabbing 51-year-old Orsolya Gaal more than 50 times at her Queens home and wheeling her body away in her duffel bag last April, was sentenced to 25 years in prison November 16, officials said. David Banola pleaded guilty to manslaughter charges on November 2 and will also have to serve 5 years of supervised release following his 25-year prison stay.